There are moments in life that last only a few seconds, yet somehow they stay with you forever. That afternoon, the sky was grey and heavy, the kind of sky that makes the whole world feel tired. Cars rushed past on the roadside without slowing down. People focused on getting home before the rain came. And then, near the edge of the road covered in dust and broken gravel, I saw something small lying completely still. At first, I thought it was already dead. It was a tiny white puppy with long fur, though at that moment his coat was no longer white. It was soaked with mud, dirt, and streaks of blood. His little body trembled weakly each time he tried to breathe. Both of his legs were twisted unnaturally beneath him, and every few seconds he let out the faintest cry, almost like he had already given up asking the world for help. What hurt me the most was not just his injuries, it was his eyes. I have never forgotten those eyes. Animals speak in silence, and if you truly love them, you learn that their eyes carry entire conversations humans are too distracted to hear. That puppy looked at every passing person with a quiet kind of fear, but also something deeper, disappointment. As if he had already learned at such a young age that pain often arrives alone. Cars kept passing. People glanced at him and walked away. Some slowed down for a second, then continued moving. But he kept lifting his head every time footsteps came near, hoping someone would stop. That tiny movement broke something inside me. I crouched beside him slowly. The moment my hand reached toward him, he flinched in fear. Not aggression, not anger, just fear. The kind that comes from being hurt too many times in a world that never explained why. His breathing was shallow. His small body was cold despite the humid afternoon heat. One of his paws twitched uncontrollably, and I realized he was trying to move but simply couldn't. "Hey, it's okay now," I whispered. And then something happened I still think about to this day. Even through the pain, even while shaking and barely conscious, his tail moved ever so slightly. Not a full wag, just a tiny motion, like a fragile little signal saying, "I still want to trust someone." Sometimes people think dogs only wag their tails when they're happy, but those who truly understand dogs know the tail is a language of emotion. That weak little movement was not joy. It was hope fighting against fear. It was a soul asking quietly, "Will you leave me too?" I wrapped him carefully in my jacket and carried him to my car. He whimpered softly the entire drive to the veterinary clinic, and every time the car hit a bump in the road, his eyes squeezed shut in pain. I kept one hand on his tiny head while driving, just so he could feel someone beside him. At the clinic, the veterinarian examined him immediately. After the X-rays came back, the room fell silent for a moment. Both of his legs were fractured badly. The doctor explained that he had likely been hit by a vehicle hours earlier. His bones were broken, his body dehydrated, and he was severely exhausted. There was also a possibility he might never walk normally again. I looked down at the puppy lying quietly on the examination table. He wasn't crying anymore. He was simply staring at me. That stare felt strangely human, calm, tired, as though he was waiting for me to decide whether his life was worth continuing. Some people think rescuing an animal is one heroic moment. It isn't. The real rescue begins afterward. It begins at 2 a.m. when they cry in pain and you wake up, terrified something is wrong. It begins when medicine becomes expensive, when sleep disappears, when exhaustion settles into your bones. Love is not the dramatic moment of saving someone. Love is choosing them again every single day after that. The veterinarian placed casts carefully around his broken legs and explained the recovery process. 14 days of strict care, medication, limited movement, constant monitoring, hand feeding if necessary. 14 days. It sounded short when spoken aloud. In reality, those 14 days changed both of us forever. The first night was the hardest. He refused to eat. He barely drank water. Every time I tried to move him gently, he whimpered in pain. I made a small bed beside mine on the floor because I was afraid he might stop breathing while I slept. That night, I learned another secret about dogs. When dogs are truly afraid, they don't always bark or cry loudly. Sometimes they become painfully quiet. He lay there silently, eyes half open, watching me constantly. Even when exhausted, he wouldn't fully sleep unless he knew I was nearby. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up because I felt something touching my hand. It was him. He had dragged himself only a few inches across the blanket, despite his broken legs, just enough for his nose to rest against my fingers. That tiny gesture felt bigger than words. Animals do not trust easily after trauma. Trust is built through repeated safety, repeated gentleness, repeated presence. And somehow, after only 1 day, this little puppy had decided I was safe enough to sleep beside. By the 3rd day, he finally began eating small amounts of food from my hand. I still remember the way he looked up at me between bites, cautiously, almost embarrassed to need help. His tail started wagging a little more too. Not wildly, slowly, softly. A relaxed tail in dogs is like music. You can tell when fear is beginning to leave their body. His movements became less tense. His eyes softened. Sometimes when I spoke to him, he tilted his head slightly as though trying to understand every word, and maybe he was... because love has its own language beyond speech. Every morning before work, I cleaned his bandages carefully and gave him his medication exactly as the veterinarian instructed. He hated the medicine at first. He would turn his head away dramatically, making me laugh even on the most exhausting days. By the 6th day, he had developed little routines. When he heard my footsteps, his ears perked up immediately. When I sat beside him, he would place his head on my lap with a deep sigh, the kind of sigh dogs make only when they finally feel peace. And I realized something beautiful during those quiet moments. Dogs don't care about your income, your appearance, your failures, or your past mistakes. They care about your presence. Who stayed? Who came back? Who chose kindness when kindness was inconvenient? On the 8th day, the veterinarian said his condition was improving better than expected. The fractures were beginning to stabilize. He still needed rest, but there was hope he would walk again. Hope. Such a small word. Yet sometimes it becomes powerful enough to heal living things. That evening, I cried for the first time since finding him. Not because I was sad, but because I realized how deeply attached I had become to this tiny creature who had entered my life unexpectedly on a rainy roadside. By the 10th day, his personality began to appear. He became playful, curious, a little stubborn. He would bark softly when he wanted attention and stare at me dramatically if I stopped petting him too soon. Once, while I was preparing his food, I caught him attempting to drag one of his casted legs forward impatiently, determined to follow me into the kitchen. It was clumsy and heartbreaking and adorable all at once. I knelt beside him and whispered, "Slow down, little one. You're healing." And maybe that's something humans need to hear too. Healing is slow. Trust is slow. Love is slow. But slow does not mean impossible. By the 14th day, the veterinarian carefully removed part of the support wrapping for examination. I held my breath the entire time. Then came the moment I will never forget. The puppy placed one shaky paw against the floor, then another. His legs trembled violently, uncertain, fragile, weak from pain and recovery. But he stood there looking at me with those same eyes I saw on the roadside that first day. Except now they were different. There was no fear inside them anymore. Only trust, only love. And then, with the clumsiest little movement imaginable, his tail began dancing wildly behind him like a celebration of survival itself. I laughed and cried at the same time, because 14 days earlier, he had been lying alone beside a road while the world kept walking past him. Now he had a home, a name, a future. Sometimes people rescue dogs. But sometimes, quietly and unexpectedly, dogs rescue people too. And ever since that day, whenever he rests his head against my leg or follows me from room to room with that gentle loyalty only dogs possess, I remember something important. The purest conversations in life are often spoken without words at all.